Hi, I'm Jamie. Welcome to my channel where we talk all things mental health and neurodiversity. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about anxiety, what you can do about it, ways you can manage it, and how I personally have dealt with my own anxiety over the years, and some top tips I have for you today on how you can also manage your anxiety well. Firstly, we need to discuss briefly what anxiety actually is, because whilst it's considered a mental health disorder, the majority of the symptoms, the majority of the impact it has on our daily life is felt within the body. It's a physical disorder as much as a mental disorder. Simply put, anxiety is just an alarm system going off in our body telling us we need to pay real good attention to something going on in the outside world because it's important to our safety. It's important to our survival. Evolutionary, it was designed to keep us safe from predators, to keep us safe from the environment that we lived in, not to be activated all the time, as it is often the case in modern life. Modern life has a way of just triggering these primitive alarm systems in our body to go off when they don't need to be. When we are in no immediate danger, when we are completely safe, we still feel the presence of that bodily sensation of anxiety. What's going on in the mind is kind of irrelevant for the most part. As important as it probably seems at the time, without the feeling within the body, without the sensations in the body, without the emotional impact of the anxiety disorder essentially kicking in, the thoughts aren't that impactful to our daily life. We can cope okay with the mental aspect of it if the bodily sensations are calmed. And this is my approach to how best to deal with anxiety, because personally this has been way more beneficial than trying to mind over matter it. Sure, you can develop your mental resilience to anxiety and you can change your thinking, you can do the inner work in the mind to kind of deal with anxiety better, to be better equipped to deal with the mental aspects of it. But until you get the bodily sensations under control, you're fighting a losing battle. So my techniques primarily consist of, initially at least, primarily physical techniques to manage the bodily sensations of anxiety, which then opens up a whole avenue of opportunities to then work harder on the mind to develop better coping strategies mentally once we've calmed the body down. So how does the body tell us that we need to pay attention to the outside world? What is anxiety in terms of the physical sensations of it? Simply put, it's just our central nervous system, which exists throughout our body and our mind, being activated to put us into a state of alertness and readiness for the danger out there. To do this, our central nervous system goes into an extreme state of activation, which is biologically called the sympathetic nervous system, or more colloquially called the fight or flight system. And it's this activated state of our nervous system which causes most of the distress which is accompanied with extreme states of anxiety. Now, originally, this system was designed for short periods of time where we are in immediate danger at that moment in time. Once the danger is cleared, once the threat has been dealt with, we are meant to then swap over to the so-called, I guess you could call it the deactivated state of the nervous system, or biologically the parasympathetic nervous system, which you could call the rest, digest, recover, restore kind of state of the nervous system. This is the default state our nervous system is supposed to exist in. But again, modern life puts us into this activated state inappropriately all the time. So what can we do about these physical sensations of anxiety? How can we tame them? How can we control them? How can we regulate our central nervous system, regulate our feelings, our emotions better, to then be better equipped to deal with the mental aspects of anxiety? Because, there's often reasons for us to be anxious. It's not always inappropriate in that regard. It's the overactivation of our nervous system, which essentially paralyzes us from action, which needs to be dealt with first before we address the mind. So what can we do about anxiety? One of the main ways that we can control the physical sensation of anxiety is by tapping into the so-called autonomous nervous system. This is the part of the nervous system which regulates the activated or deactivated state. And for a long time, it was considered off limits to us in terms of our conscious control over it. But that's not necessarily the case, because the autonomous nervous system is what controls our heart rate, our level of stress, our breathing rate, the amount of adrenaline in our body, the rate of our digestion, all of the processes which contribute to the feeling of anxiety and the physical impact of anxiety. And out of all of these processes, the one that we have the most conscious control over is our breathing. It's an automatic process, but it's also something we can take conscious control of at any point. We are able to take a breath on demand in any way at any point. But if we forget, if we allow our bodies to do its own thing, it will just automatically breathe. But we can take advantage of this because studies have shown that the way we breathe has a direct impact on the level of activation or deactivation of our nervous system, the primary cause of the felt sensation of anxiety, the big issue there, the big cause of distress. So how does this work in real life? Simply put, when we breathe in, we slightly activate our nervous system towards the sympathetic, aka the fight or flight system. Every time we take a breath, our heart rate goes up and our level of activation also goes up. On the flip side, when we breathe out, the opposite happens. We deactivate the nervous system, we calm the nervous system, we switch on the opposite state of the nervous system to the activated anxiety state. So how can we use this to our advantage? It's simple. The ratio of our time breathing in to our time breathing out has a direct impact on how active or deactive our nervous system is. What we can do is use this to our advantage and extend the length of time which we are exhaling for relative to the inhaling portion, so that every in-breath we activate a little bit, every out-breath we deactivate a lot more. If we can increase the ratio of the exhale length to the inhale length, maybe twice as long exhaling as inhaling, that will over time have a calming effect on the nervous system, which is half the battle. We calm the body down, we calm the mind down. There is direct connection between the mind and the body, but also the body and the mind. It works both ways. The other way we can use our breathing to our advantage is by the rate of how fast we are breathing. Because as we all know, when we're in a state of anxiety, when we're activated, how fast we breathe goes up massively. When we're having a panic attack, we hyperventilate. It is a well-known symptom of panic disorders, of anxiety disorders. It's fast, shallow breathing. So what can we do to counteract that? Again, we can take conscious control of our breathing, slow the breathing down, and the body will react accordingly. By reducing the rate of breathing, we also reduce the amount of activation of the nervous system. Just using these two simple principles of longer exhalation relative to the inhalation and also a slower rate of breathing combined together to really calm the body down, which then calms the mind down. It's the first step in getting control of your anxiety, is to get control of your body. So let me simply demonstrate that. If I was to inhale, say for 2 seconds, 2, I would just simply exhale for 4. Simple as that. How about the rate of breathing? Well, it's quite hard when especially when you're in a state of panic, to get control of your breathing. I fully understand that, but you can do simple things like just taking little pauses in between the inhalation and the exhalation, adding a little bit of extra time between breaths to really slow the rate down. Now, when you're in a real high state of panic, that might be initially quite difficult. You might only be able to pause for half a second, 1 second between an inhalation and an exhalation. That is fine. That is the start. That's the way it starts. To get a control of our breathing, a little pause before you exhale, a little pause before you inhale, and then gradually increase the amount of time that you pause between inhalation and exhalation, and gradually that will slow the rate of breathing down. The slower you get your breathing, the calmer your body will become. If we can then pair that with the extended exhalation as well, we can really tap into this autonomous nervous system control and really get a grip of our activation or deactivation state and tip the balance into that calming, relaxing state that we want to get a grip of our mind and our body. So I would suggest focusing on making the exhalation, just focus on making it longer, as long as possible to start with, so you can get a little bit of control over it. Once you've got a little bit more control, you can start to play with the ratio a bit, maybe 2 seconds in, 4 seconds out, 2 seconds in, 5 seconds out. The longer you can make the exhalation relative to the inhalation, the better. The more you're going to tip the balance towards that calming state. This is how we can use our breath to control our anxiety. And this has been one of the most revolutionary tools personally that I've found for managing my own anxiety, to use my breath to control the bodily sensation of anxiety before I even worry about trying to change my thoughts. Another thing we can do is tap into the biochemical causes of this activation, which, to really simplify it, it's essentially an excess of adrenaline. Adrenaline is the chemical in our body which tips us into the active state. And when we are highly anxious, highly fired up, highly stressed, we have a lot of adrenaline in our body, which is driving all of these processes, such as the increased heart rate, the increased respiration. It shuts down our gut. It causes all sorts of digestive issues. It causes the horrible sensations of irritability, of restlessness that accompanies anxiety. Is primarily driven by adrenaline. Adrenaline is a molecule that your body releases to essentially allow you to move. It's the primary driver of motion. It's designed to put us into a state of activation to fight off the threat or run away, the fight or flight system, as it's called. We need adrenaline to do this. If we're face to face with a real threat, with a tiger, the amount of adrenaline that we can produce, it could be the difference between being able to get away from the threat, being able to fight off the threat, or becoming a meal for the threat. So we can use this to our advantage, because we know that adrenaline is heavily linked with movement. The body does not care about what you do. It just wants you to do something about the threat. There's something that needs to be addressed out there that we need adrenaline for, to activate us, to be able to use our full power, our full strength to deal with the threat. But ultimately, the body doesn't care what we do, whether we run on a treadmill or whether we run away from a tiger. The body doesn't know the difference. So when we feel highly in a state of high anxiety, movement is the best thing we can do, other than the breathing techniques. And sometimes getting some movement is the best way to initially deal with the anxiety, because it clears some of the adrenaline from our body to get us a little bit calmer, so then we can get a grip of our breathing, focus, pay attention to our breathing better, and we can finish the job with that. But initially, sometimes it might be worth just getting up and moving. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Sometimes just getting up and walking around is enough to calm ourselves a little bit, to take the edge off some of that anxiety that we're feeling by just burning off some of the adrenaline. Over time, you probably want to incorporate more movement practices into your day-to-day life. The gym, jogging, walking, whatever it is that you're into, dancing, anything that gets you moving, even just fidget toys, small hand movements. It's still using up some of the adrenaline, which is probably why a lot of people, when they're anxious, they start to tap their feet, they start to get a little bit jittery. It's an excess of adrenaline that's kind of forcing their body to want to move as much as possible. So we can use this to our advantage, and any kind of movement is going to use up adrenaline, it's going to calm the body down, and it's going to put us in a better place to mentally deal with the anxiety that we're dealing with. My final tip for today is going to be a little bit of an introduction to how your diet can play an impact on anxiety. We're going to go into a lot more detail on all of these things, on the breathing, on movement, and on diet, and how it relates to mental health as the channel develops. But simply put, when it comes to anxiety, one of the best things you can do diet-wise is to get a grip of your blood sugar. Why is that? Because one of the most anxiety-inducing states our body can be in is a state of low blood sugar. Having hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, it automatically triggers all of these processes which we associate with anxiety. It's the same feeling in the body. And often our state of anxiety is actually just misinterpretations of a feeling of low blood sugar. We need to eat. The so-called hangry state we've all been in when we're waiting for a meal, when we've starved ourselves for a nice meal out with the family, and the restaurant's busy, the food gets delayed. It triggers a state which is very, very similar to anxiety in our body, and people often mix these two states up. So if you're an anxious person anyway, the last thing you want is big dips in blood sugar, which are going to make you feel more anxious And because the mind and the body are so connected, sometimes just that feeling of activation of the body because of the low blood sugar can actually make our mind fill in the gaps and try and come up with reasons to be anxious when really we're just hungry. So what can we do about this? Well, essentially just be more mindful about what you're eating, when you're eating, how often you're eating, what types of food you're eating, and how they make you feel. Do certain foods make you feel more anxious? That's probably because they're dipping your blood sugar after a period of time. Essentially, when it comes to blood sugar, the faster a food increases your blood sugar, the faster that blood sugar is also going to get cleared from your body, because blood sugar is actually, believe it or not, it's actually toxic to our brains, toxic to our bodies. It's quite a dangerous state to be in if our blood sugar is too high. So we release insulin to get that blood sugar down, to get the sugar out of the blood into our cells, into our muscles where it can do something. And what makes our blood sugar go up and down fast? It tends to be the refined carbohydrates, simple sugars. Anything that's going to spike your blood sugar really fast is also going to tank it really fast. So the more sugar that you have in your diet, the more erratic your blood sugar levels will be over the course of the day. Again, fast in, fast out. Big increases in blood sugar, big drops in blood sugar. When we get the big drop in blood sugar, we will naturally get the exact same sensations in the body as we do when we feel anxious. Again, often we can mix these two up. It's going to drive the mental aspect of anxiety just by the fact that your blood sugar is low. So what I would suggest you do is first focus on cutting out simple sugars as much as possible. Unfortunately, a lot of the foods that we enjoy in the modern life, enjoy in our modern diets, are not so great when it comes to a mental health aspect. So if you're a person that's highly anxious, I would suggest really paying attention to what you're eating. Cut out all of those refined carbohydrates, swap them out for more slow release carbohydrates. If you're a big carb fan, personally, I'm not a big fan of carbohydrates because it affects my mental health so badly, and we will be discussing on this channel more about the impact of diet, in particular carbohydrates and sugars, on our mental health. I think you'll be surprised at how much of an impact it does actually have on our minds, what we eat. But if you're a person that has to have carbs in their diet, then my first suggestion would be to swap to more slow release carbohydrates, foods that are higher in fiber. So anything that's going to release the sugar slower is going to also cause less of a dip in the levels of blood sugar over time, and cause more. Ideally you want really stable levels of stable levels of blood sugar throughout the day. The other thing you can do is by changing the timing of your meals, being very mindful about not leaving too long between meals, having smaller meals more often. It tends to keep your blood sugar more stable because you're not having that big dip before the next meal if you're waiting too long. And again, increasing the amount of fiber in your diet will slow down, especially if you're eating a lot of sugars. Having some more fiber in your diet will slow down how quickly that sugar gets into your blood, which will offset some of the drop in blood sugar down the line if you really must have these simple carbohydrates, these confectionaries, all the things that we enjoy. Personally, I'm a big fan of the ketogenic diet for mental health management. Personally, I find it keeps my blood sugar far more stable throughout the day by cutting out carbs as much as possible and eating more of a high protein, high fat diet. It tends to give me more energy, stability of the day, and I'm not getting the anxiety state triggered just by the fact that I'm a bit hungry because I had a high carb meal. That blood sugar is now dropped. It's getting close to lunchtime, and I'm starting to feel on edge. Protein is also a great source of amino acids, which is the building blocks, dietary wise, for a lot of the brain chemicals that are involved in regulating our nervous system. So without the right amount of protein in our diet, it's actually very hard for us to regulate our nervous system chemically, because we can't produce the right chemicals that we need to either activate or deactivate the nervous system. So essentially our body's all over the place without protein. It's one of the most important macronutrients that we can consume in our diet. Likewise, fat is essential for the construction of our brains, our nerves, and a lot of our hormones. And don't take it for granted the effect of our hormones on our mental health. A lot of mental health is actually more, like I say, it's more of a physical imbalance of different things. It's either an overactivation of the nervous system or an inability to deactivate the nervous system. To deactivate the nervous system, we need certain chemicals to be available in our brains to switch the stress hormones off, to switch the fight or flight nervous system off. We need these, and these come from a lot of these come from proteins and fats, not necessarily carbohydrates. Likewise, like nutrient deficiencies like B vitamins, vitamin D have a massive effect on our mental health. Magnesium is so important for the ability of our body to switch off the nervous system. Magnesium is one of the primary minerals that our body uses in a lot of the processes which are used to switch our state into the deactive state. So we can use our diets to play around with our nervous system, just like we've discussed with the other techniques, and put ourselves in the best state physically to deal with our state mentally. So that's just a brief introduction to some of the things that I'm going to be discussing more on this channel. Obviously, it's a brand new thing that I'm starting, so we're also going to talk about some of the mental aspects of mental health. It's super important to be able to get a grip of what's going on inside here. My first port of call is always the physical state of the body. Once we've got the state of the body under control, it's so much easier to control the mind. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this content. At the end of the day, you're taking this time for yourself as much as anything, because this is all for you. These techniques are there to help you get a better grip of your own mental health. If you've enjoyed today's video, please consider hitting the like button down below. If you've got any comments you would like to make, any feedback about the channel, any feedback about future content you'd like to see, or if you've got any tips yourself on how you personally manage your mental health disorders, specifically anxiety, but in general, please put some comments down below. Let's get this channel going. Let's get this community built so we can help each other ourselves. Have a great day. Take care, and I hope to see you back for the next video.